Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet a seasoned C-suite executive who's going to share some of his wisdom based on more than 30 years in business. His story just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, we all know behind every top-performing athlete on the planet is an equally brilliant coach. And so why wouldn't the greatest CEOs on the planet also have a coach? Somebody who knows a lot about that is my next guest, Jim Russo. He's with the Boardroom Academy. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about your background before we talk about Boardroom Academy. Tell us a little bit about your history in business.
Well, in history, in my business, I was a CEO of a finance company, actually a software development company. And we started out by trying to figure out what our wow factor was. And that's how we founded it. And the wow factor was, how can you provide a better service? I mean, it was an accounting-based system. And most accountants that are imaginative are probably in prison. But so we figured that what's going to differentiate us from someone else is to provide a better service, and that's how we started it.
Absolutely, and you had a life-changing experience in Temple. Tell us about that.
Well, I did, and it was incredible. The school professor decided to have a capstone program for their graduate programs. And this is the International School of Business. And for that program, the students had to consult, a real live engagement, consult, and this is their first time out. And so what the professor did, pull together of business people that served as coaches to these students. And what happened was on the first run, they were successful because they had to deliver it on time because they needed it for graduation. It was on budget. It was a stipend that was paid to the school. And they had many professionals gathered around one table coaching these kids. And I'll tell you, when I saw the success of this program, my eyes opened and said, every entrepreneur, every business leader sometimes needs a little coaching.
Absolutely. Tell us about the Boardroom Academy.
Boardroom Academy was founded as a result of that. We act as a coach to the CEO and the C-suite level. We become their sounding board. Is this a good idea now? I'm thinking about doing this. Is it the right phase to do it? This is what keeps me up at night. How did you handle it in your experiences as an executive? So that's pretty much it. We become a shoulder to them, someone to talk to, someone to confide in.
And speaking as a CEO, it's sometimes a lonely job. You can't confide fears with employees, and so you become just a truth teller, don't you?
That's correct. We won't hold back at all on the answer. We don't give the CEO what he wants to hear. We give the CEO what he needs to hear.
Wow. You told a great story right before the show began about Pablo Picasso.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. People sometimes ask, well, why do I need somebody? Eventually, you did it without a coach, which isn't true. I did it with a coach. But you did it without a coach, and what can I gain from you? Well, you can avoid the mistakes I made, and you can benefit from their successes. And the story goes like this. A woman walking down the street recognized Pablo Picasso, a big fan of his, and said, "I love your work. Could you please, just for 30 seconds, draw a picture for me?" And he did. Took out his pad and drew it in 30 seconds, handed it to the woman and said, "It'll be $1 million." And she said, $1 million? Why would it be $1 million? It took you 30 seconds. He said, yes, but it took me 31 years to be able to do that in 30 seconds.
Wow, that's a great story. I might have to borrow that from you. Let's roll his website, and as we scroll down the website, let's talk about the kinds of clients you like to work with, because my understanding is that you work across industries.
I do. We are agnostic. There's no particular industry. We like to work with people who are just trying to start. The statistics, depending on who you read, statistics tell you that 50% of the businesses of the startups are going to fail within 5 years. I don't believe businesses fail. I believe the people behind those businesses fail because they don't understand what they want to do. So my target is to see that entrepreneurs, like the students, get a fair shot at succeeding. That's all I want them to do.
Absolutely. You were telling me right before the show that you have 3 pillars, 3 M's.
I do. There are 3 M's that we've asked our clients to focus on. One becomes the mission statement. What are you about? What are you building? What are you selling? What are you servicing? And why are you doing it? Is it because you just like it, or is it because you have a better mousetrap? Is the world ready for a better mousetrap? Will they pay the price you have to pay for that better mousetrap? The second M is the money. Do you have the money to do what you want to do? Can you get your financing? How do you get your financing? To whom do you go to get the financing? And then finally, M is the management. How do you level it out? The CEO can't be up 168 hours a week, which we all have, worrying about the business. We've got to put the right management in place to support the CEO.
You were telling me a great story about a woodworking business that you worked with.
Yeah, that was a small woodworking shop that tried to grow a little bit. And the CEO was struggling with particularly inventory. He had a lot of inventory, and I'm afraid to say in these days, inventory is not our friend. It's a cash outlay, and then inventory just sits there. So we helped him develop a plan on timing of that inventory, looking at how far out you go with your orders, and then order accordingly. So that was a big success. Because again, it was an entrepreneur, and I got a soft spot in my heart for the entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Well, I can see why you're so successful. We've got some video from our library of just corporate America. And one of the things that we're seeing right now, I'm sure you're seeing the headlines, is quiet quitting, employees just kind of mailing it in. Have you worked with businesses that are having morale problems and trouble getting the troops all, rowing in the same direction?
Always. It's hard for an employee to tell his employer what he thinks is the truth and there's a difference between what he wants to hear and what he has to hear. And employees won't tell the CEO what he has to hear oftentimes. He tells them what he wants to hear. We're not in that position. We have no axe to grind. We have no dog in this fight. We tell the CEO what he has to hear. He doesn't have to take our advice, but he has to hear it.
Sure, and sometimes there's trouble between departments because, the sales department doesn't really understand what the marketing department is doing and vice versa. Do you help companies navigate that?
We do, through communication. As soon as a client is signed, every area of the company should know that a client is signed. The client support teams need to be ready to accept that client. It's one thing to get a client, it's another thing to keep a client. It's a lot cheaper to keep a client than to acquire a new one. So client acquisition and client satisfaction is a must.
Absolutely. Jim, we got a couple minutes left, so I want you to talk to the CEO out there who's struggling, saying, I might be time to bring in an outside coach, and it might as well be Jim. What do you want to say to that CEO?
Well, whether it's Jim or not, you should have a coach. It's someone that you talk to. It might be your significant other at night when you're home having dinner. You just bounce things off of her. But she's going to give you a yes or a no, or he's going to give you a yes or a no. And we've become the sounding board for you. It's either me or somebody else, but please get somebody to challenge you.
Amazing words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing it with our audience. We're also going to leave you with his website, which is boardroomacademy.com. The great Jim Russo. Thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That's it for now. We'll see you next time.
Yep.